Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this month's Inspired Learning Project's digital conversation. Each month, we feature an inspired educator doing incredible work from across the globe. And this month, we're excited to welcome Liz Garden, who is principal at Mayo Elementary School in the Wachusett Regional School District in Massachusetts. And today, she's going to share her infectious passion for culture, literacy, and the work that she's currently doing at Mayo Elementary. Welcome, Liz.
Thanks.
Liz, thanks so much for joining us. We're really glad to have you, and we're really glad that you're also one of our Inspired Learning Catalysts, so we'll be hearing more from you across this year. So Marianne was kind enough to give us a brief introduction to who you are and what you do, but I was wondering if you could dive a little deeper, tell us a little bit about your career to this point and how you ended up at Mayo.
Sure. So I, first of all, am not a Massachusetts person. I kind of grew up all over from Ohio. I was born in Kentucky, lived on a farm in Ohio, moved to Virginia, and then made my way to Massachusetts in 2000. And I was an educator for 11 or 12 years. I taught everything from preschool to high school biology to grad students. And then I found my way to administration as an assistant principal of the early childhood program in Leominster Public Schools. So I was there for a couple of years in 3 schools. That was fun. And then I moved over to Groton Dunstable, where I was first an assistant principal in we had 2 schools. I had a principal who was in 2 schools. I was in 1. And then so it was like the reverse of what I did in Leominster. And then I became the principal there. I was there for 7 years. And, just last year, I made the change to a little bit closer to home. I live in Shrewsbury, and I wanted a new challenge, and I wanted to be closer to home. So I ended up at the Mayo Elementary School in Holden, Mass. I'm also an editorial advisor for the Principal Magazine with NASP, so I love to write. I do a lot of writing articles and posting for different publications, but that's one I work with pretty regularly. And I'm the, second vice president of the Massachusetts School Administrators Association, learning what that means. And I'm also on the Principal Advisory Board for Scholastic, so I know we're going to talk about my level. I do work with and different schools around the Commonwealth and around kind of the Northeast.
So that's all, Liz?
I mean, there's other things, but I try to limit it. And I'm a mom. I'm a mom of I have a 5-year-old. Well, no, sorry, I've aged her. She turns 5 in December. I have an almost 5-year-old little Spitfire, and I'm also a foster mom. I'm coming up on a year of being a foster mom to a 5-year-old kindergartner. So yeah, just a few things.
Well, thanks for carving time out of your very busy schedule to be here with us. You mentioned in the opening that you have a love of writing and a love of reading, and I kind of want to get started there because in our pre-conversation, we talked pretty extensively about all of the efforts that you put into building a culture of literacy in your building. You're obviously a very passionate reader, and it's something that you share with your school committee. I'm wondering, what are some ways that you foster that love of literacy in your school community, not just with the students, but also with your staff as well?
Yeah, my big philosophy is that I want everybody reading every day. And that means everybody. It doesn't just mean the students. It means the staff. It means teachers. It means my custodian. It means, my nurse. It means everyone. And so that starts with me, I feel like. And so I do love to read. And I also really believe that, everybody can be a reader and love reading. It's finding the right book. I mean, my own husband will say he doesn't read. He's a musician. He says he reads music. But, when he found the Harry Potter series, he became, an avid reader of that series. So, it's finding the right book for, with the right person. So I just, I kind of every day figure out how can I get everyone reading. I mean, I had actually a great story happened just, I think the day after we talked about like this conversation where one of the things is that I want kids to have access to books all over the school, not just in their classroom, not just in the library. So I have a lot of like little free libraries within my school. Like we have one in the front lobby, and then I have one that was just built last year by a 5th grade class. We may or may not have had power tools like during the school day. Everybody was fine. There were no injuries. But the kids worked with my custodian to make this little free library, and we installed it this year. And on, I think maybe Thursday or Friday last week, my custodian came to me and he said, I was cleaning the tables, and in our cafeteria, you can see the windows to the back behind our school where the little free library is. And he said, I was, cleaning the tables in between lunches, and there were kids out there for recess. And he's like, and a couple kids, I watched them walk up and pick out a book and go and find a spot to read outside. And he was so proud that he was involved in making that, and that he got to see the kids taking advantage of it. And, to me, that just shows, when that message of everybody reading every day, he's involved in it. And some people would say, well, he's the custodian, what's he gonna care? And we added this year on all of our staff IDs, I had everyone bring their favorite book to get their picture. So everyone from the custodian to the nurse to the teachers, on their staff ID, it's a picture of them holding a picture book or a children's book that they loved. And so that sparked a lot of conversation with kids and with staff. So, I just try to do something pretty much every day. On Friday, we just had our literacy parade, which was where every grade dresses up in some way about a book or a book character. We parade around the whole school. Parents come. We give away books. That's my other big thing, is that, kids need, if we want everybody reading every day, they need to have access to books. So whenever I can, I give books away. I give a book to every kid on their birthday, so that they look forward to that. We give, anytime we have an assembly, since we had the literacy parade, we pick students and we go to the teacher before the parade and we say, okay, this is the kid that's going to get the book this time. What book are they going to want? So it's not just kind of like, oh, we have 50 copies of the same book. It's like, this is the one that this kid wants. So, really making sure that we are putting books in the hands of kids. I haven't done it here in Wachusett yet, but it's coming. I did it in Groton, where I went, I spent the summer delivering to every single incoming kindergartner's house a book for them with a special note from me, just them how could them become readers, and that they were going to do that in our school. So just, those are just a few things and about my philosophy of getting everybody reading every day.
Well, and I think it's particularly impressive because, I know you don't have a librarian at your school and you've kind of taken that on. But I also want to cycle back to something that you had said earlier about, like, it's not just the students reading, but it's also getting the teachers reading as well. And you started a program called You've Been Booked. And how have you fostered that with adults? I know there was a story about a nurse that you got reading, or can you talk about those, how you inspired adults to start reading?
Well, so as I'm looking behind me, this is our one of my conference rooms, and on the windowsill are books. Like, these are adult books that we did a book swap for kids, and then my staff came to me and they said, like, can we do a book swap for us? And I was like, yes. And so anytime I can, like, we'll have a day before winter break or a day before, like another vacation week. I tell all the staff, like, hey, bring in books that you've already read, and we'll lay them out on the conference table. And all day long, if you want to come and like take a book, leave a book, whatever. And the first time I did it, people were excited about it. Every time since then, it's happened because people have asked to do it, so that's like one example. My nurse came to me at the beginning of the year and said to me, that's really great that you share books that you're reading and talk about books, but I don't really read. And I was like, oh, challenge accepted. Yes, you do. And so, I just said, I didn't go to her and say, well, you have to read. I said, okay, well, she has kids of her own. that go to a different school in our district. And I said, oh, like, what are your kids reading? And so we started kind of a conversation that way. And then, I share books every week that I'm reading through my weekly blog post. And so sometimes she would come and say like, oh, you mentioned this one book. And I was like, oh, I have it. Do you want to borrow it? And then it started where she was sending me text messages on the weekend of like, this is my favorite chapter. And then by the end of the year, she sent me a picture of a cover of a book that she had finished. And she was like, oh my God. And I had given it to her to borrow to read. And I said, and she said to me, this was so great. I love this book. And it was a middle grade book, a chapter book. But, the point is that she sees every kid, pretty much every kid in the building. I have 500 students here. Yes, I want my teachers promoting a love of reading, but, if I've got the nurse, when kids are in there popping into, sometimes there's the frequent flyers or sometimes there's the kids who are really sick. But either way, if now she can talk about books to them, that's just another avenue that is promoting reading and a love of reading. And then the UB book that you mentioned, I just did that last week leading up to Halloween. Again, a lot of these ideas I can't take credit for. I mean, that one I got an idea from a principal who's in Illinois, where, there's that thing where kids do in neighborhoods like you've been booed, and they run up and put a sign on the door, and it's just kind of like, and then you go do it to somebody else. So with this concept, I went around one day after school before a weekend, and I picked out a couple books, and I went to the classroom and I left the book for them, and I left the sign, and it said, and then the instruction was, this is a book for you, for your classroom library, but now you have to go and book somebody else. So you can either get a new book, you can come to my office and get a book, you can take a book from your classroom library and share it with another class. And people were so excited, and I didn't say anything, but I did it. Of course they're like, they usually know.
Yeah.
But I was like, I don't know who gave you that book. I have no idea. So to see the signs spread throughout the whole school to where, I'm pretty sure I've seen it in every window of every classroom. I don't know. I think I have. And even the day after Halloween, we had a kind of crazy thing here. We had a 2-hour delay. We had no power. It was like a really fun day after Halloween. When one of the teachers came to me and she was like, oh, I just got this, but, is it okay to still do it? And I'm like, yes, it's okay to still do it. And she said, oh, I have this great book I want to, I have at home. And I said, well, you don't even have to do that. Come and shop in my library in my office. And so she came and found a book. And I don't know if it was her, but I'm going to guess, because then at the end of the day on my desk, I had like a little, like a set of new bookmarks, like those little magnetic bookmarks, and a note that just said, something about thank you for helping us spread the reading culture in our building. Here's something for you, and we know that you're in these. So it's just really neat to see like just another fun. And I feel like you can do that with, Halloween was a great time, but I plan on doing it. There's another idea that I haven't ever used yet where you just take a gift bag, because reading is a gift. And so you take a gift bag, you put a book in the bag, and you just leave it in a classroom, and you say like, I think I was going to call it and say like wild about reading, and like, wild reading, where as soon as you get that gift bag in your room, you got to drop everything and you got to read this book to the class. And then you got to pass it on to somebody else. And so just that like reading can happen at all times, and it can be a gift.
Liz, it sounds like reading is not only a passion, but a cornerstone for how you build a positive culture within your school. And as a school leader that has transitioned through, not only several different buildings, but several different districts, that transition is both a huge opportunity, like you've capitalized on at Mayo, and also, can be challenging as staff and teachers, you begin to build trust. So wondering, for aspiring leaders or leaders who might be new to a district, what advice you have for them that they can get actionable towards building a positive culture in their own districts or their own building?
So, yeah, I have a lot of ideas on this. And I wish that I had been given advice when I took over as an administrator, but I didn't get it. So it's okay. I think that, what I have learned over the years is that it all comes down to relationships. It all comes down to relationships. And, you have to earn that trust. You have to build those relationships, and it's hard work, and you have to keep working at it. Yes, you have to work at it when you come into a new environment, but you have to continue working on it. Even if you've been somewhere for 10 years, you have to still do that. For me though, like coming to Mayo was a chance to really make sure that I let people know how focused I was on building those relationships. So a couple things I did. I scheduled individual meetings with everybody. And if they were able to meet with me over the summer, I did that, but I said, don't worry, if you can't, that's your time too. So if you can't, then we'll make sure it happens like within the first month of school. And I just had no agenda. So we had those meetings, and, people learned all kinds of things. I mean, one, they learned about me, but they also I learned about them, because I just said, there's no agenda. So you could ask me questions, you could tell me about you could, and, it was, and I learned a lot about the school through those conversations, and that helped kind of guide my entry plan. And I also did things like, I always remember when I was a teacher, unfortunately, I don't think I always had the best administrators. So I always think I don't want to have the experience that I had for my staff. So I always remember when I was a teacher that, teachers want to be appreciated, and they want to be acknowledged, and it doesn't take much. And so I always send out a survey to my staff, and I include things like, what's your t-shirt size? What's your favorite snack? What's your favorite drink? Non-alcoholic. What's your, if there was one thing that I could get you for your classroom, what would it be? What's an address of a family member who, would like to hear about things you're doing in school? And so then once I have that survey, I did things like one year with my previous staff, last year actually with the staff, I mailed a Thanksgiving card to every single person on my staff, and I wrote out a message specifically to them. My husband was like, why are we paying for stamps for all these people? Don't you have mailboxes? And I was like, everybody likes mail, and in my last school, I actually sent letters to family members saying how proud I was of them and how proud they should be. And I got letters back from a 99-year-old mother who, I swear, I think we were going to be pen pals for a while. She would in her penmanship write me these letters and saying, no one has ever done that for me, for my child, who, they're adults and they're teachers, but they're someone's child too. And so, recognizing them. And then this year I used that information to surprise everybody. I brought to show, I ordered t-shirts. I had t-shirts made for my whole staff that say difference maker. And then our hashtag is Mayo Rocks. And I was like, people might not like these, I don't know, but I'm just going to do it. And it's people want to wear them. They wear them pretty much every Friday, but they love that. And they think oh, I can't believe that you did that for us. And they're proud of their school. And so, so just doing things like that. Also, I'll say for our staff meetings, there was I had to shift sort of the culture of the staff meetings. And so we start our meetings off. I started it way back in the beginning with just giving out a card and a compliment to 3 separate staff members. And so I had these cards that I had made that just have a quote that we all agreed on as a staff. It talks about, says, you never know the power of a simple word or action. The smallest stone dropped into the largest lake will leave ripples felt miles away. We can't undervalue our impact, our reach, and our potential. And that's from the book Kids Deserve It. And so I just write a little message to 3 different people, give it to them, share at the staff meeting. Their job is the next staff meeting, they have to give it to somebody else. And so we had, the whole year, I gave 3 out and then I didn't give any more, but I had people writing poems for people. I had people, asking to give they're like, well, can I give 5 out? Can I give more out? And we're doing them again this year. And, it's just an automatic, and people love to start the meeting that way. Just appreciating each other.
And have you seen that appreciation that you've passed on to your teachers taking that on and passing it on to the students? How has that kind of manifested itself into the classrooms as well?
Yeah, well, like one example is that last year I had at the staff meeting, I had everybody, like, I pick a one word for myself every year. So I shared that with them, and then I said, okay, now I had us at a staff meeting, everybody painted a mug with their one word, and we did it in the art room, and they loved that activity. And then they said, like, this would be really cool to do with our students. And I said, yeah, it would be, and so I didn't tell them they needed to, but most of them did some kind of activity where, I had my fifth graders had made some designs on one side of a card, and then they wrote the reason for why they chose their word. So we displayed those in the office. A third graders, they just had little sticky notes they had on their desk with their word. So it definitely, trickled out, the positive compliments. I mean, I do, like, positive post-it day every year. I'll celebrate that in the building, but I see, like, I have teachers who, like, that's an automatic for them. Like, once a week they say to their kids, like, all right, how can you go send a positive note to somebody else in the building, whether it's a student or whether it's a staff member. So it absolutely, has a ripple effect. And, I see kids, well, I see teachers, happy to be at work, happy to work really hard for me. And then in the end, then you have kids who are happy to be at school because their teachers are happy. So it's a really great domino effect.
So Liz, what was your word of this year?
Oh, crap.
Don't mind me asking.
No, I was like, I've had so many, but I had to actually go back and look. So my word this year was love.
Mm.
And in the years past, I've had create was one of my words one year. And moment was one. And when I read The Power of Moments, that book, it really impacted me. So this year it was love. And that was partially personal, like with my experience in my family. And then partially that's been a message I've shared with my staff, that we need to really make sure our kids know that we love them.
So kind of transitioning a little bit to classroom practice, or kind of doing a deeper dive. Your school is making a pretty big shift this year to focusing on implementing universal design for learning as a means of improving the student experience. For those who aren't aware of UDL, what is it, and why particularly did you decide to take on this project?
So, I like way back when my very first experience in education was, I was a paraprofessional at a special needs school for because it was pretty significant disabilities. And that sort of molded who I became as an educator, I feel like. And I also worked in a residential program early on in my career for kids with autism. And the mindset in both of those programs was any kid can do anything. And so I've always carried that with me. When I learned about universal design for learning several years ago, thankfully, in my last district, Dr. Katie Novak, who is like the guru of UDL, happened to also be my assistant superintendent. So, when I heard it, I was like, yes, this is what I've been trying to say, that we need to make sure that we're getting rid of any barriers for any kid, because every kid can, has the potential to succeed, as long as we, like, I love kind of her mantra is always, the curriculum is not broken. Sorry, the kids aren't broken. It's the curriculum and it's the system that's broken. And so universal design for learning, I think that it does a lot. It gives us a lot of opportunity to get every kid engaged, to give kids options, to have them really like own their learning and be in charge and be a part of the process, as opposed to just sort of being handed the curriculum or complying with tasks. So several years ago, I had the chance to do this work in a different district. And, when I came here to Wachusett, and to Holden, I said, like, ooh, this is something that you guys need to learn about and hear about. So, I brought Katie here last year to just start exposing them to it. We got a grant and we were able to give everyone a copy of her book, UDL Now. So we've been reading that. This Friday, I'm now bringing a teacher who I consider an expert in UDL, and she's coming to train my teachers. I've sent teachers to other schools to go and observe. So right now we're in the phase of really talking about it, getting an understanding of what it looks like. But I've seen what happens when you make a change like that. When I came to my last school, I had 0% growth in the special needs population. That's pretty bad. You can't really get any worse than that. And so there weren't any changes happening. So we completely redesigned how we were instructing our kids. And one of it was the adults needed to shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, a big part of, I feel like, what UDL lends itself to. And then we had to really change how we were instructing kids. And in 7 years' time, we did that. And, my last school was one of the top 50 in the state for academic achievement, not just elementary, middle, and high school. And it was, we had over 50% growth in the high needs population. So it definitely works.
Now, one thing I wanted to, and I think it ties into UDL because a huge component of UDL is the student agency and choice of being able to demonstrate understanding. I think that, which is also a hallmark of our concept of inspired learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
That it's real work that matters, that has relevance outside the four walls of the school.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of our challenges as a group, and I think it's great that you're kicking it off, is that a lot of times we look at that through the lens of the secondary level. And we're able to do that because of all of the foundational skills that elementary educators such as yourselves and elementary leaders such as yourself have built up. I'm curious about how you think about inspired learning or that authenticity piece at the elementary level, while you're also trying to develop, students who are just learning to read and learning just, to write, and some of these absolutely critical but still foundational skills. How do you think about that?
So here's what I think about. A couple of things. First of all, I love that I have experience where I taught high school and I taught elementary, and I used both, like in both areas. I feel like I kind of had a similar mentality. But what I think about at the elementary level is that our elementary kids are, they're amazing. They are amazing with, I feel like, unfortunately, what happens over time as they go up through upper elementary, middle, high school is, they have this, they're so curious. They come up with solutions to things that, I often say to my staff here, we got to figure out how to fix this problem. And I'm like, you know what, I bet if we talk to a couple of fourth graders, they're going to come up with something for us. And so, they have this amazing, just way about them that I feel like sort of gets snuffed out as they get older. And so I absolutely think that at the elementary level, I mean, kids are, I'm always saying, they're super resilient. They are super creative, and they are just so inquisitive. So, if there's anybody that should be, we should be really focusing in on, it's tapping into kindergartners and first graders with what they come up with. Because I used to say in my last district, I would often invite the high school staff to come down and sit in a kindergarten classroom, because your mind would be blown with what they are doing at the kindergarten level. And I mean, I know you say yes, we're kind of building that foundation, and yeah, we're teaching them to read, and we're teaching them to, but those are honestly basic things I feel like that we're teaching them. I mean, they come to us with so much, and I love my students here. They learned pretty quickly that I will listen to them. I mean, I had a group of kids last year that came to me and they said, you know what, in our library, where we don't have a librarian, we don't have any magazines, and I was like, oh yeah, you're right. That's pretty bad. I mean, I should order some. And they're like, no, we're going to write you one. We're going to make one for you. And I was like, oh yeah, that's even better. And we would have, board meetings, and we would have planning meetings, and they assigned everybody a job. They had an editor, they had somebody that was doing, the cover design, they were interviewing people, And I didn't do anything except for give them a meeting time and a space and tell them that I would, tell the rest of the school about what they were doing. So like that's like a simple thing, but that was totally driven by them. And it also told me too, I said, I said to my teachers, like, hey, we've got kids who want to create a magazine here. Like, what are we doing in our writing instruction time? Like, because like we should let them do this even more in class. It's great that I'll give them that extra opportunity and, we would meet during lunch or whatever. And, but like, let's let them drive what we're going to do in class. So.
Yeah, Liz, I think, and John, Marianne, and Maureen have talked about this on a regular basis. Sometimes when we travel through the elementary classrooms, it reflects more of what we'd like to see, that integrated approach to learning that we'd love to see up at the secondary level. I also think it sounds like, I think it's David Perkins who talks about it, but John Mehta and Sarah Fine wrote about it in their book, In Search of Deeper Learning, that this idea of letting kids play the whole game. So when kids learn how to play baseball, they learn through t-ball. They're not just taking grounders and then, their first year at 7 years old is just drills, right?
Yeah.
But, playing a miniaturized, accessible version of the game and letting it really giving them that exposure. Finally, and I know, John, you have I'll give you the last question here, but your description sounds a little bit, and we'll put in a plug here for our Inspired Learning Convention in March. We have Matthew Dix, who's coming, who's also an elementary educator, and he tells this incredible story. I won't ruin it, but the whole idea behind it is talk less, expect more. And when you do that, the kids do just amazing, incredible things. I get like chills just thinking about the story, but it sounds very similar to what you're doing at Mayo.
Yeah.
And John, I'm going to give you the last question as we wrap up, because Liz has been awfully generous with her time.
Yeah, thank you for your time, Liz, and for sharing so much. It's been exciting to hear about the way you're building relationships and the way you're connecting with the community and the way everyone's mobilizing around this idea of literacy. And then when you layer on top of it the UDL and you start to challenge some of the assumptions we make about curriculum and sort of the purpose of school, see that you're building capacity within your staff to really make some exciting changes and to move forward. And so when you think about pulling the lens out 5 years or 10 years, what are some of the changes that you think might result? I know, easy question, right? What are some of the changes that you think about from building the capacity the way you are in your school?
Yeah, it's funny, I actually kind of just had this conversation with my assistant superintendent the other day. So I do have a vision of what I would like to see. And I think that with what I've already seen in the short amount of time of just the exposing people to the idea of UDL and that learning in school can look different, I would like to see kind of in 5 years, I'd like to see that just the physical environment of our classrooms looks completely different. That it's not, perfect example is this year we just keep growing in Holden. And so, there was a point where it was like, we need more desks. And I'm like, I'm not ordering more desks. Like, we need to do something different, like maybe we could have a different area, maybe we don't have desks, but, so like, I'm hoping in 5 years, I'm not even having to have that conversation because, I've seen where once you kind of bring in the thought process of UDL, how that can completely change class environment, like, just starting with that piece. And then also just probably like, I would just like to see teachers just more comfortable with being uncomfortable. I think right now they have a lot of really hard workers and they love what they do and they're dedicated, but they're working really hard. And sometimes it's, I think that they can, I think, like you said, do less. They can do less and have more happen. And some of that though is going to make them uncomfortable. But I like to see that, like when teachers are just really challenged to just say, hey, this looks different. I mean, we had a discussion actually this summer about the UDL book, and we were talking about our schedule even. And somebody said, well, here's the problem. Like, we have this, writing that happens after lunch. And I was like, well, why does it? Like, does it have to, or do we have to have it only be during that block of time? Or what if our schedule looked very different? So I would want to see people being comfortable with being uncomfortable, and really obviously just seeing students taking ownership and really helping us drive the bus.
Yeah, exciting to hear you talk about that UDL mindset. Like, anything is possible once people are constantly thinking in terms of best for kids. But we do have that conditioned reaction, right? More kids, we need more desks.
Yeah.
There's the solution to this.
Yeah. So I'm like, I didn't order any more desks. I was like, we'll figure out a different plan. So, because we still keep getting kids.
And probably the risk taking and the talking less doesn't happen unless they have that trust and that relationship. And so it all goes back to where you are now and building that up with everyone. Exciting to learn about it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Liz, thanks so much for your time today, and just the insights that you've shared with us. I think I'm glad that we're recording it, because I know this will be valuable for both current leaders and aspiring leaders. And we're really glad to have you on board as part of the Inspired Learning Project. So thank you again for your time.
I'm excited. Yes, thank you.
All right, so not much of a break between this interview and the next. We are back tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock. We are welcoming John Warner, the author of Why They Can't Write. I have been so surprised by that book, because as much as it's about writing, it's taking a really holistic approach just to education in general. If you haven't read the book yet, please pick up a copy, check out our interview. It will be recorded as well. It's an insightful book that can be applied to just about any discipline and every age range. So be sure to check that out tomorrow. And then in December, we also have Elliot Washer, of the Big Picture, founder of the Big Picture Learning. We'll be talking about his book, Leaving to Learn. That will be in December released. And for the Inspired Learning Project, I'm Dave Quinn, Director of Technology Integration. And thank you very much.